movie fans. So besides being a big movie person, I am a huge baseball fan, but given that I'm a Rockies fan,
existence is pain.
So I just end up rooting for baseball as a sport in general over, my pathetic team. But every once in a while you get a glorious intersection of movies and baseball. As a child of the 90s, I was a big fan of The Sandlot. It was my favorite baseball movie of all time until 2011 when Moneyball came out. And honestly, the older I get, the more I love Moneyball. So today, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to extol the virtues of one of my all-time favorite movies. The thing is, you don't actually have to be a baseball fan to enjoy Moneyball. It's not even really about baseball. Moneyball at its core is really just about people doing the boring stuff, the nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes stuff that ultimately gets the job done, which, this may seem hard to believe as I'm a person on camera on YouTube, but I like the behind the scenes stuff. I very much enjoy those behind the scenes jobs. Also, as a huge numbers and stat head, this movie really appeals to me. It's a running joke within my family of useless facts and information. Like, hey, did you know Todd Helton hit .372 in the 2000 season, leading the Rockies in hits in basically every offensive category? Yeah, I have a problem. Moneyball opens, but not in a way that most movies would start off. They typically do something really suck you in with a big action scene or really big epic grand scale of something that really establishes the tone. No, Moneyball starts with the character sitting all by himself, far away from the action. I love the recurring trend of Billy Beane, both the real-life person, as it was explained in Michael Lewis's book, Moneyball, because this movie is based off a book, which is an incredible read, by the way. Billy Beane, as a character, is far removed. You have the Yankees and the A's playing each other in the playoffs. It's a game in New York, and Billy is home in Oakland, sitting all by himself, but not even in the luxury boxes. He's in the nosebleeds in the dark. He doesn't want to be around people. The thing is, the spotlight's not on him because as a character, he had the spotlight on him and he crumbled under that spotlight. It's a wonderful character portrayal of this character that had the weight and the expectations of the world, and when he didn't meet them, he could not get outside of his own head. How does he translate teaching what he does know to the next generation? How does he make sure the next generation does not repeat the same mistakes that he did? But we cut back to this nice dark scene. Is this character in isolation, removed from the action? Because for a narrative and from a sheer motivation standpoint, there's nothing more Billy can do in this circumstance. Billy tries his absolute best to formulate the best team he possibly can, but unfortunately, because the game is rigged against the Oakland A's, who are very poor, they lose to the Yankees in the playoffs because the Yankees have a lot more money than the A's. This is the core thesis of the movie: rich teams versus poor teams. Insert my favorite line in the entire movie.
There are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. And then there's us.
So after the loss, Billy basically goes to his boss and is just like, hey, I need more money. And it's a really random cameo from Bobby Kotick, which, why? And here's where we get the boring day-to-day, the excitement, the rousing energy that comes with playoff baseball in September and October. That's now gone, and you get back to work. It's like, what do you do the week after the Super Bowl or the World Series? What do you do when you just have your average, boring life? Your day-to-day job that you really have to focus on that as opposed to the glorious spotlight. And we get more or less the main headquarters of action throughout the movie, the Scouts Room. I love that this is not a glamorous place to work. Not a bad place by any stretch, but it is a dark, bleak dungeon. You get the glamour of a baseball field, this wide open canvas for players to roam around and have fun. The Scouts and Billy Beane are locked away in this dungeon with no windows, no outside light. It's all basically in the bowels of Oakland Coliseum, which if you know baseball, it's like the worst stadium in all of baseball. But I love that this place has no windows, so there's no outside view of the real world. Almost like they can't see their progress being actually played out on the field. They can't see their decisions actually taking effect. So basically, Billy and his team need to replace their three biggest name players in Jason Giambi, Jason Isringhausen, and Johnny Damon. They all went for a lot more money. And they're making these choices based off things that have worked in the past. They need to come up with a new way if they're going to survive. So there's all these names being thrown around, but they're looking at things from the old perspective, and a new perspective is needed if they're going to actually survive and make any forward progress. I like, though, that not all the decisions that they make work out for the best. It doesn't glorify Billy Beane throughout the movie. I love the fact that he handpicks this guy named Jeremy Giambi, brother to Jason Giambi that I just mentioned left the team. He picks Jeremy Giambi. Well, what happens in a few months when Jeremy Giambi, at least portrayed in the movie, I don't know about in real life, is a locker room cancer that has to be shipped away to another team. I love that Billy is the one that has to personally get rid of Jeremy Giambi, showing that he is an infallible character, and sometimes in your own life, you're gonna make a mistake. I think it's interesting. I think it's just a neat little note. But besides Jeremy Giambi, for the most part, most of the guys that they end up recruiting for the A's this year work out for the best because they approach things from a different perspective. They're not looking for the big, sexy name that'll drive ticket sales and put butts in seats and will be the all-star that leads the team. They're looking for the guys that will get on base.
He gets on base a lot, Rocco. Do I care if it's a walk or a hit?
You do not.
Insert one of my favorite characters in the entire movie, Scott Hatteberg, played by Chris Pratt. This is a player that's more or less been cast aside by every other team because he used to play catcher, but his arm is a little bit shot, so Billy and his team want to move him over to first base, where I used to play. I'm not emotionally invested in this character at all because I'm projecting on him. Oh boy. So they essentially meet Scott Hatteberg at his house and be like, hey, we want you, but we want you to try something different. You have to trust us. We got to try something a little different. We're going to move you to first base because let's face it, you're not a catcher anymore. And if you were, ours wouldn't be the first call that you got this offseason. I love that line. Also, in this whole meeting, we get arguably one of my favorite lines in all of history as a former first baseman. It speaks volumes to me, and I cannot agree more.
You don't know how to play first base. It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash.
It's incredibly hard.
So with Scott Hatteberg and a whole bunch of other rejected players that are essentially labeled as the island of misfit toys of players, they start their preparations for the upcoming season. And boy, does it look rough because they're trying to make change. Change takes time, for better or for worse. Big change, small change, any form of change takes time, and I appreciate that there's always some form of resistance. I love the line at the end of this movie. We're not getting too much into spoilers, but he takes a meeting with somebody else. We'll circle back to that later, but the guy that he's meeting with has a great line about change.
The first guy through the wall, he always gets bloody.
And they're trying to introduce this systemic change in the Oakland A's. And the manager, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is great in this, everyone's great in this, doesn't like it because he's one of those old school guys, just like the scouts that Billy's working with. He has to change the minds of both the scouts and his manager. It's a little bit of an uphill battle all around. I love that this movie takes place over the course of a whole season. You see the small changes that happen over time. It's this implementation of the day-to-day processes. It's not one big sweeping, oh wow, we're great overnight. It's a hard change. It's a hard process. It's a whole bunch of little things over and over again. This movie really reinforces it's a process. It's a process. It's a process. To me, that really just resonates of anything you do if you want to be good at it. It's a process. It's a process. It is not the glorious what people see out in the public. It is the boring. It is the mundane. It is the average. The little things that you do every day, the repetition that makes you good at whatever that specific thing is. So all of spring training is done. We're finally to opening day. The players are taking the field that Billy has assembled, but where's Billy and all the other behind the scenes characters? Well, they're again behind the scenes, tucked away. They're far away from the action because I love that they've put all the pieces on the board and they are trusting that the pieces that they've put on the board will execute the plan that they have put in motion to the best of their ability. That's why the pieces have been chosen for specific purposes. It's not that an individual is great, it's that collectively they all have individual roles that will make the team go. But because everyone, including the players, the management, the scouts, everyone is so used to the old way of doing things and it's such a drastic change, the team kinda sucks. So they lose a lot. But I love that at the low point that happens in any sports movie, because at the end of the day, this is still a sports movie. At the low point, you get the training montage. You get it all the time, whether it's Rocky or Warrior. I love a good training montage, and Moneyball is not your average training montage. In most training montages, you get like the grand epic bench pressing and the running miles and miles and getting stronger and getting better. They're doing the boring, routine, day-to-day stuff, the unglamorous stuff. They purposely do not show the glamorous side of training and montages, because if anybody has worked out for a repeated length of time, it is not always glorious. It's tedious, it's mundane, it's obnoxious and frustrating. But that's the point. You don't always get to be the glamorous side of things. Sometimes you need the tedious, because that's where the actual strength comes from. That's where the actual building up comes from. So they're watching tape, they're watching old games, they're in a batting cage in the basement. That's the closest we get to actual baseball, any activity. But slowly but surely, the team starts to get on board. They start to get it. They get this change of mindset of, if I get the little things right, the things that people don't pay attention to, then we start winning. Because when the team does start going on a winning streak, the commentators are like, oh wow, it's a fluke thing. But no, it's a whole bunch of little things that the regular person won't pay attention to. The little things at the end of the day are what matter more than the big things, says, the video editor who likes to stay behind the scenes. Ultimately, the A's are on such a hot streak that they are closing in on the major league record for most consecutive games won. They have won 19 in a row. They need to win just one more to 20 to break the record for the most wins in a row. And what does Billy do? Well, up until this point, Billy likes to put the pieces on the board and take his hands off the controller completely. He does not go to the games. He does not watch the games, because he tries to put his trust in his players that he's put for specific purposes. Also, he's a baseball player, and a good portion of them are superstitious. So he's like, well, if I go, they're gonna lose. They are up by a bunch of runs going into the final couple innings. So it's just like, oh, victory is secured. So Billy's like, fine, I'm not gonna jinx it. And he goes to the game. And as soon as Billy gets there, the other team ties things up. Billy, once again, is like, oh no, I'm not meant to be in the spotlight. The spotlight comes back on him once again, and he starts freaking out. Because I failed in the past, it means my team can't do it now with the way that I have taught them. And then, who should come to the plate but Star-Lord himself, Chris Pratt, as Scott Hatteberg, the guy that was cast off by every other team because they viewed him as a defective player. But because he was taught a new way of doing things and routinely put in the work and was flexible and adjusted to the way things were under the Billy Beane way of doing things, the Oakland A way of doing things, and the manager trusting him, he comes up to bat in the final inning. And he hits the walk-off home run, and it is a glorious scene. The music just cuts out, and it's just the crack of the bat. It's rewarding not just for Scott Hatteberg, it is rewarding for Billy Beane of going, yes, little changes are difficult, but you can do it. It's a big thing to change over an entire system, but in the end, it can be entirely rewarding if you put in the time and the effort to really amplifying the little things and not focusing on the big things. So then our beloved Oakland A's win 20 games in a row, and they're going to the playoffs. They're going to the playoffs. They could win the championship, except no, they lose in the playoffs again. And honestly, I know that they lost in real life. I love the fact that they lose at the end of this, because it's this thing of, yeah, your method worked up until a certain point. That's where you keep improving and learning for next time. The story isn't over, just like the story's never over in real life. Yes, you get a goal or mission accomplished. What's the next thing? Nothing ever stops. The world keeps going. So there's stuff to learn for next time. The A's are still trying to win a championship, even if they're not going to do it in Oakland. That's a very frustrating video for another day. I love that the A's actually don't win it all in the end. It would have been the cliche sports thing to do. They don't, because there's still things to learn, as there's always still something to learn. For his efforts, Billy Beane is rewarded with an interview for another team. A team with a whole lot more money that would be a whole lot easier for him to win. He gets an interview with John Henry, the owner of the Boston Red Sox, which, Red Sox, Yankees, the two biggest names in all of baseball, and they've routinely lost to the Yankees. So Billy might actually be able to finally beat the Yankees. Just means going to somebody else to do it. I love the contrast specifically of this Red Sox interview. Almost the entire time we see Billy for most of this movie when he's spent with the A's, he's in dark, dimly lit, underground areas with no windows, no seeing the outside. Again, he can't physically see the product on the field because he detaches himself and he's locked away. However, when he's interviewing with the Red Sox, it's wide open space. He can see everything. He's in a press box. He's not tucked underneath. He has direct view to the field. He can actually see the road ahead of him. He can see the product that he has put on the field day to day. And he turns the Red Sox down. I love that he sticks with the A's. One, because, that's just how it happened in real life. But it shows that there's no easy way to go about just about anything. Anything worth having that's good is going to be a little bit difficult to attain. And that's the point. You got to put in the effort. You got to work. You got to grind. And it's tough at times. Again, this whole video might just be preaching to me, who is unabashedly a behind the scenes, nose to the grindstone type video editor person in my own life. But don't get me wrong, I love that. I never want the camera on me. I do this because it's, just me in this room talking to you guys. I just love movies that show the day-to-day, the grind, that the little things pay off in the big picture. I love Moneyball so much, not just as a baseball movie, just as a movie in general. And the more I watch it, it's like an ogre. It's like an onion. There's just layers that I peel back every single time that I watch it. If you have not seen Moneyball, I cannot highly recommend it enough. What do you guys think? Have you seen Moneyball? What are your thoughts on the movie? Have I just completely ruined it for you? Have I encouraged you guys to see it? Whatever are your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you're seeing and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.